trickle in still, they'll be welcome to. Okay, hello. My name is Mona Filip, and I am the newly appointed Chief Curator here at Contemporary Calgary. And it's really my pleasure to welcome you all to my first public program here. I'm really happy that this is the one that I start with. Our program tonight, our conversation, is called Conversations Across Continents. We're gathered here to introduce a project that is situated at the intersection of several cultural perspectives, artistic practices, and decolonial intentions. But I will begin by situating ourselves on the land on which we are currently gathered. In the spirit of respect and truth, Contemporary Calgary acknowledges the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, District 5 and 6. We also acknowledge that Contemporary Calgary's building is situated on land immediately adjacent to the Bow River, which has shaped this land and its people for generations. Our guests this evening are Salimata Diop, French and Senegalese independent curator and artistic director of the 2024 Dakar Biennial, Ablaye Mbaye, Senegalese storyteller, drummer, and Wolof dancer, both of them based in La Rochelle currently. Catherine Sicot, who I've known for about, well, let's not say how many years. She used to be my boss. French-Canadian director and curator of Elegoa Cultural Productions and member of Interwoven Futures Collective. And last but not least, Adrian Stimson, interdisciplinary artist and member of Siksika Nation and member of Interwoven Future Collective. And don't worry, they will explain a lot more about all of these collectives and projects and groups. And we also have Chantal, who will be translating for Ablaye in particular, but also for the public from French to English when Ablaye intervenes. Thank you so much. So our lovely guests will be speaking tonight a little bit in more detail about their respective practices and will introduce their major artistic initiative, X 2027. Thank you for coming. Currently in development, that is partly why they're here. A project that is being woven between communities, organizations, and institutions in France, Senegal, and Canada, and now including Contemporary Calgary. We're very happy to participate. The panel is actually in the context of a 10-day visit that they're here for to Siksika Nation, where they were invited by Shannon Bear Chief and by Adrian, and to Calgary and Mohkinstsis, which visit is supported by Elegoa Cultural Productions through the Canada Council Strategic Innovation Fund Cultivate program in partnership with Daphne Indigenous Artists Run Center in Montreal. So I will actually now ask each of you to introduce yourselves a little bit more in depth than I did, to give us a little bit of context about your artistic and curatorial practices, just to give a bit of an overview for the audience that doesn't know you yet. Who would like to start? Adrian?
Okay.
You're probably the one most locally known.
Sure. It'd be a pleasure. Thank you, Mona, and welcome to Calgary and Blackfoot and Tsuut'ina and Stoney Territory and Métis Nation. It's really good to have you as part of the community. We're so very excited. Ukinuksukua, hello all my relations. Bonsoir et tous. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all tonight. My name is Adrian Stimson. I am an interdisciplinary artist situated on the Siksika Nation, about an hour east of here. And I received my education through then the Alberta College of Art and Design, now the Alberta University of the Arts. Got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting, majored in painting. And then I moved to Saskatchewan, to Saskatoon, and got my master's at the University of Saskatchewan, where I sort of branched out more into performance art, installation, and pretty well everything else. So that's why I call myself an interdisciplinary artist. I lived in Saskatoon for about 10 years. And during that time, I was also at the Mendel Art Gallery then. I was first started off as a program guide, then into mentorships, in particular with Peter von Tiesenhausen, and then moved into artist in residence, then curator in residence, and then became associate curator. So curatorial work also is part of my process. I'm honored to say today that I am the current chair of the Alberta University of the Arts. So from student to actual chair is a bit of a leap, but I have to say I'm very honored to be in that position for the next few years. My practice as an artist, as I mentioned, spans a number of disciplines. Painting will always be my first love, and I will paint continuously for the rest of my life, and often create series of works. The icon of the bison, or Ini to the Blackfoot, is a major part of my work. And the reason for that is that the bison was everything to the Blackfoot people. We are a matriarchal society, and the Motokiks, the buffalo women, lead us. And so it is interwoven into everything, not only our societies and leadership, but also into the things we wear, our shelter, our food, and everything. So for me, the history of the bison I find very analogous, the same as the people, the slaughter of the bison and almost extinction of the bison. I speak to a lot about in my work, and that effect, that traumatic effect on the people. And so for me, that is a big part of my history and my work. What we will probably talk a little bit tonight more about as we get into the project is in performance. I created an alter ego during my master's.
Let's leave that for the moment.
Yes, okay.
Because we got pictures.
Okay, we'll leave that for the moment. We'll talk more about that because it actually relates to the project that we're working on. But needless to say that there are a lot of aspects of my work that cross over and will affect the project overall. And yes, and other than that, I'm just working on a number of projects around the country. National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan. Did an Earth to Sky at Airdrie recently. There are a few public installations here in Calgary. Gawapomacakes, Animals that Roam the Prairie, and down Alberta past, present, future count at the Calgary Library. So that's me in a nutshell.
Ablaye, do you want to take over?
Alors bonjour, merci à Contemporary Calgary et à Mona et puis à Catherine de nous avoir invités là. Je m'appelle Ablaye Mbaye.
My name is Ablaye Mbaye.
Je suis né au Sénégal, en Afrique de l'Ouest.
I was born in Senegal in West Africa.
Je suis issu d'une famille de griots, d'une longue lignée de griots, de musiciens, de conteurs,
I'm from a family of traditional arts like storytelling and a musician.
Et puis de la mémoire collective.
And also from the collective memory.
De la communauté.
Of the community.
Okay. Alors, je vis à La Rochelle depuis une trentaine d'années.
I live in La Rochelle for 30 years now.
Et depuis que je vis à La Rochelle, je travaille autour du tambour, dans la transmission de la culture africaine, autour du tambour, de la danse et du récit.
So since I'm in La Rochelle, I work in drumming and dancing through African culture.
Parce que la meilleure façon de se connaître, c'est de s'approprier les cultures, entre autres, sans passer par l'appropriation culturelle. Mais bon, juste se connaître à travers la pratique culturelle, quoi.
the best way to know yourself is just to own your culture. I know through other cultures, but your own culture.
Parce que le respect commence par là. Apprécier la culture de l'autre.
So respect starts by recognizing someone else's culture and appreciating it.
Voilà, je vais revenir sur ça tout à l'heure.
Okay, I'll talk more about that soon.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bonsoir tout le monde et merci Mona pour nous avoir ici ce soir. Moi aussi je suis ravie que ce soit ton premier programme public à Contemporary Calgary. Alors je m'appelle Catherine.
En anglais, Catherine.
En
anglais, Catherine.
Est-ce que j'ai dit tout en français? Oui. Ah. That's what happened. Constantly, all the time.
When you live between multiple languages, they all mix up in your head at some point.
So my apologies.
Often.
Switching to English now. I'm a curator. I'm an independent curator and cultural producer. I've been doing that for 15 years now. I was born in France. I lived in France until I was 33 years old. So I studied in Paris. I studied art history. I worked in a museum. The first museum where I worked was the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris. And then I came to Oakville Galleries, that is a contemporary art gallery near Toronto. I came for 8 months internship that lasted for 11 years. So it looks like there is something in my life that is often not planned and that rolls, goes with the flow, a lot like this project. So what's maybe specific to my practice, I have worked in museum a lot in education and public programs. I wasn't a curator of exhibition, and although I did curate a few exhibitions, and I still do once in a while, I pretty much set my path with working outside the walls, without walls, and working on my own without any institution has been a very stimulating possibility for me. So then I'm going to pause here because we will further talk about...
Can you maybe say a little bit about If Collective and how it evolved from MDDT? Just outside
but
of
it's like you're cutting the story. You're taking like a big step
Okay,
ahead.
we'll come back to that then.
Okay, I think it's best.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mona, for having us. I want to start by expressing how grateful I am to be here, to have the chance to get to know the Siksika Nation, and so I want to really thank you, Adrian, and especially Catherine, for inviting me and creating this residency, bilingual residency. My name is Salimata Diop. I'm a curator. I'm Senegalese, French. I'm Jewish, Polish, from Swiss, French through my mother, and Senegalese, Peul, Wolof, from Bombay and Kébémer and Saint-Louis through my father. I am based in La Rochelle, in France. I've been in La Rochelle for now 5 years, but I grew up in Saint-Louis, a city in the north of Senegal that is a cultural crossroads in itself. Historically, that is at the very north of the country, nearing at the border of the Sahara, where the river Senegal stops the Sahara, and where many cultures have always mixed and met. I've always kind of seen myself as a bridge between cultures through my multicultural heritage, but also because how I my curiosity and my love for artists and artistic practices all around the world. I graduated in London on the very day when the Tate Modern published a manifest saying that they were committing to become a platform for African contemporary art. And again, I was considered lucky to start my professional journey at the very time when the Western world was prepared to realize and accept that there was contemporary art being made in Africa, on the continent, and by the diaspora. This was a very important turning point because it just comes after decades of denial for this contemporary creation, and then started. There have been pioneers, of course, working on giving more visibility to this contemporary creation, but there have been individuals, kind of pioneers and avant-garde in this long journey. But this was a time when things would start to change, and when finally all the cliches and the prejudice against this contemporary creation would really start to change. I've curated many exhibitions and public programming in my career, and I've directed the Africa Center in London for a few years, and I also was in the founding team and initiator of many projects that were starting in this cause. So, for instance, the first and still only contemporary art fair in France, dedicated to art from Africa and the diaspora, called ACA. And I remember an anecdote that I think says it all. On the first day of the opening, I remember probably with my bad habit, I have having a cigarette outside just before the door opened, and entering the fair just as the first members of the public entered the fair, and someone said, it was a couple of very French people, and they said, "Oh, I thought this was about African art," and what they were seeing was not what they expected. And I thought, okay, my job is done, and and let's go on. And I've also created a museum of photography in Saint-Louis in Senegal, and more recently, my most recent project is creating the Dakar Biennial last year, and I will tell you more about it later.
Wonderful. Congratulations to all of you for all the amazing work that you do. Perhaps now, Catherine, would you like to be the one to introduce a little bit the project that you're all involved in La Rochelle, since you were a little bit the initiator, the instigator, as you always are, with these things, bringing the Interwoven Futures, formerly known as the mobile decolonial do tank, because we've done enough thinking. It's time to really do it.
Yeah.
And just give us sort of the context and how it came about.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell a story a little bit, not too long, but as I was telling you, when I start a project, I often don't have any idea where it's going to go or how long or if it's going to fail, because that happened also. And although I sung Sont les filles de La Rochelle, which is a very traditional song since my childhood, I had never been to La Rochelle. I lived 3 hours from La Rochelle all my childhood. But I was invited in 2017 by Edouard Morneau, the former director of a residency program in La Rochelle called Centre Intermonde, Humanité Océane. I was invited as I was not at all expecting it, because I was meeting him in Cuba to talk to him about developing together a project in Cuba. And he knew a little bit of the work I had started to develop with indigenous artists and curators. Adrian was one of them, because we had worked together on a 3-day performance event in 2019. One Dan and a Bush, there were others. And he suggested that I would invite one indigenous artist from Canada to La Rochelle to come for a month's residency and to do an exhibition in their wall. So I went for a week, maybe 8 or 9 months later. I went for a week visit in La Rochelle. I discovered the city. I discovered the history of La Rochelle, which is very a major colonial history. La Rochelle was the second port in the triangle trade, for example, for nearly 2 centuries. It's a wealthy and powerful little city, very arrogant in a way. It has museums, a public museum with mind-blowing collection of cultural belongings coming from all over the world, including from Siksika Nation, or Blackfoot nations at the least. So I suggested that inviting one artist for an exhibition would make absolutely no sense, and that there was a huge amount of work to be doing with the museum community, the cultural community, the diaspora, and that we should have a different start. So 2 years later, we came back, thanks to a first funding, with Adrian, with Barry Ace, who is an Anishinaabe Ojibwe artist, with Laurie Bevis, who is Anishinaabe also, with Georgiana Uliarik, who is Canadian and Romanian.
And Romanian, like me.
And the 5 of us, did I miss someone? Barry, Adrian, Laurie, Georgiana and I, we spent 10 days in La Rochelle, and they presented their work. And we went on a visit of the city. We went all the way to Nantes also to meet artists and to see the memorial that is dedicated there to the abolition of slavery. Nantes is also an important harbor in that regard. And after 10 days of building relations among each other, because that was the major first step, well, we realized, I remember Barry told me, okay, Catherine, you're alone working here, so we're going to work with you, we're going to come around you, we're going to be with you, and we're going to develop a project all together. That's how we became the Mobile Decolonial Do Tank, first group, and we started to develop residencies in La Rochelle, gradually. Is that okay for the start?
I think you can, well, or maybe if Adrian wants to pick up and talk a little bit about how you arrived to this premise of the X 2027 project.
Absolutely. Well, I think, it was a great opportunity, of course, for Barry, Laurie, myself, and Georgiana and stuff, and Catherine, while we were in La Rochelle presenting, of course, leaves a lot of time to discuss and like, where are we going to go with this and such. So, of course, we all start to think, and as we do as artists, we think pretty big, and we had this huge grand plan of what we'd like to do. And it really involved notions of exhibitions, of performances, of cultural exchange, so the whole gamut of things. And we were trying to figure out how to do this. So we formed a collective. And through the collective, of course, you can access money like Canada Council and approach other funding bodies, which gratefully we were successful at. So it really led to further discussions with Intermonde, with other organizations. It was really fact-finding, really sort of getting into the sort of workings of La Rochelle and understanding its history, understanding what's in those collections. Is there a way to utilize those collections, repatriation. I know the museum, the Nouveau Monde, was very afraid of our visit because there's Blackfoot material culture, and I think they're expecting me to walk in, grab it, and leave. So, which I kind of was tempted to do because it is Blackfoot material culture. But really, it was an opportunity to talk about other ways of doing things. And I think that there are already examples. For the Blackfoot, we had repatriated Crowfoot shirt that now is at the Blackfoot Crossing, which you will all see tomorrow. But it was interesting because there was a lot of protocol around that, and Exeter finally agreed to give it back to the Blackfoot, and a delegation of Blackfoot went over. I was actually over there at the time, but caught COVID, so I couldn't actually go with the delegation to the exchange of the shirt. After that exchange, the Blackfoot people presented them with a whole new outfit, Blackfoot outfit. So there in itself is the notion of generosity and reciprocation, in the sense that, yes, we have a history, but we also have to create relationships today. And so I think that was sort of an example of the way we hope to approach a lot of things with La Rochelle, but also to decolonize. They're very, how would you say, very strict organizations and have very sort of preconceived notions of all of these things. So for us to come in there and sort of share other ideas was not only a challenge, but a great opportunity to change the way we think about culture, the way we think about how we exhibit and all that stuff. So for me, that was sort of the impetus of wanting to remain involved in the project and look at the possibilities, which we'll share further. You want?
You can see in the images some moments in visiting the museums and seeing, what is there in their holdings.
There's one thing I wanted to add to what Adrian was saying about the way this project is unfolding, is that we realize that there's no relation. Like, people don't have the time to build relations. They work, they produce, they have the less and less budget. This is the case of the institutions in France, everywhere, but France has been hit hard lately. So one of the thing we decided to do was to invite the two conservatrices from the museum to come here. And we did a tour last year, just like we did with, no, it is a different one, with Ablaye and Salimata this year, but we spent 12 days. We were invited at Siksika. We were invited at Chigen First Nation, which is on Manitoulin Island, in Kanawake, and we also met with many indigenous curators from different organizations, including the National Gallery, the McCord Museum, and we gave them the opportunity to hear people that has gone through already 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of thinking and inventing what it was to decolonize museums. So it also gave us the opportunity to just had many dinner, many lunch, and laugh together. We attended the Siksika Powwow also, which are moments where you connect in, and when you look at the cultural belonging that are in your vitrine after, it's just not the same story. So we did that. We did that in La Rochelle too. We had several waves. Our residency, Adrian came twice already. He will talk later about the project he's building. And in the process, and that will connect to Ablaye and Salimata, in the process of doing that, I met a woman in La Rochelle who is a very activist and a very knowledgeable woman who has worked with African artists for many years, Danielle Olgiati. And she told me once, okay, you are doing Rencontre decolonial encounter program with indigenous artists, but it's fantastic, but you cannot do that without inviting African artists and other artists from all over the world. And I said, oh, great, that's a great idea. I don't know how we'll do that, but of course we'll do. And we were lucky, and that's serendipity. So Ablaye has been living for 30 years in La Rochelle, so that's not as much serendipity, but you have been there for a very short time. And here with Ablaye and Salimata, and there are others, we were able to bridge with the communities in La Rochelle, which Ablaye is working very, very hard for a long time, and with Salimata, with an incredible expertise and network of African artists and curators. So then maybe the last thing you can start to talk about is the X2027 project. This is where I wanted to arrive.
Yeah. Do you want to pass it to Salimata? And should we bring up your images?
Yeah, that would be
Already?
great. I
Yeah.
was
So
just going to
Melody,
say,
if you're able to bring up the other PowerPoint, we'll start getting into
yeah.
a little bit more in depth into
when
your
people,
different perspectives.
ask me where I live, and I tell them I live in La Rochelle, they was like, huh? Why? You don't live in Paris or in Dakar? Yes, it's serendipity.
But La Rochelle is an amazing city to live in. It's beautiful. Well, you must see.
I'm going to talk about La Rochelle. I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about my practice, if that's okay. And I'm going to take the example of the Dakar Biennial just to illustrate how also my practice kind of aligns with the way the other members work. I always pay a lot of attention and research the territories where work is and the communities, and try to create these relations. And I also pay a lot of attention to the spaces where I work in. The Dakar Biennial last year, the theme that I've been on was the wake, and my intention was to look at this place that is so historically so important in the colonial history. Dakar used to be the capital of Afrique occidentale française, Western French Africa, and it was a center of gravity of the colonial force. After many peripetties, the Dakar Biennial ended up having its main. It takes over several spaces in the city, but the main space for the exhibition, and especially the international exhibition, is the old Palace of Justice. That is no longer used as a Palace of Justice, but that was in function during the last decades of colonized Senegal. So you can imagine, sadly I didn't include a photo of the facade, but it was a building from the 50s, built in the 50s by French architect in the brutalist movement. That is,
we know something about brutalism in this building.
Well,
but not such a.
It was meant
not the
to
same
be
history.
A palace of justice in the capital of the Western Africa, French Western Africa. So you can imagine how the intentions was not exactly to be welcoming, and so that everyone can feel curious and welcome to come in and see the art. So you can imagine how stern and impressive, intimidating is the word the facade is, and we've actually invited an artist from Haiti to build an installation on the facade. This photograph is the installation of Wangeshi Mutu, who is an artist from Kenya, who took over the Supreme Court of the palace. And the way we worked with her was to actually, take a lot of time to talk about the history of the place and how and the trials that actually took place there. And there are quite a few historical trials with, dissidents sent to jail and she
political trials.
Well, yes. And even after the independence, because it remained Palace of Justice years after, and there are famous political opponents
Opponent.
to Léopold Sédar Senghor, who was the first president, who also got a pretty evidently unfair trials, and also
It was very much an instrument of oppression.
I think
And
that's a
yeah.
good way to say it. Sums it
Weeding
up.
out any kind of resistance
exactly.
or opposition to
So
the
people
regime.
like Mamadou Dia, people like Salimata Diop, and she took the time to also really look into this history, Wangeshi, and this is her installation, and the words on the grounds that are meant to be fading away because it's just really red sand from Senegal, from Dakar, from the Dakar volcanic sand. It's from a poem by Léopold Sédar Senghor, so the first president, who was also a poet, who pretty much represents that transition and who talks about independence as an arrachement. How to say arrachement? A reaping?
Something you have to rip away, you have
Yes.
to extract.
Yes, so pretty ambiguous
Mhm.
for the president who got the
Elected.
independence to happen. And I think maybe we can go to the next slide. And we ended up working with a fantastic team of curators from around the world and an amazing scenographer to really turn this palace into a place where people felt welcome and where people could sit and talk and meet and participate in workshops, in participative performances. And something happened. It became a huge TikTok trend.
It's always good when that happens.
Well, that's
Well,
not what
sometimes.
the French journalist said. And I found it very interesting because when it started to be crowded like no other Dakar Biennial edition had ever been by young people from Senegal, where it used to be the usual suspects. So, I was really emotional. The first day where I walked in and I saw this crowd, I was tearing up. And there was 2 articles about that phenomenon. One by Le Monde, French media, that was kind of condescending on the TikTokers, and this one by the New York Times, who I think really got it and named it "Come for the selfie, stay for the art." And this was just for us the biggest victory to reconnect with the public that this biennale was always meant for, and to not only give opportunity of visibility for African artists who always need more of that, but also to bring the world to Dakar, to bring the art world and the artistic practice from all around the world to these youth. So back to La Rochelle.
In the meantime, in La Rochelle,
So you have to picture me going to Dakar and back to La Rochelle, back and forth, and coming back to this city where I've never really got implied in the cultural scene. It was always to me my little home. It's a very beautiful city by the beach, and it's practical for family, personal reasons, and
you never got involved or embedded into the. You stayed separate.
Yes, exactly. For 4 years, for 3 years, I've absolutely. But I still had that a lot of I'm going to say it, shock and anger when I walked in the streets And it's a city that is very, it's a very nice place to live, and it has a lot of cultural life. There is a university, there are cultural, there's a theater, cinemas, and it's a small city, but still had a really dynamic cultural life for its size. But you also have in just the pretty small city center, you have on the main square, for instance, this monument that we call the elephant monument, that is in a tribute and to the pioneers of Côte d'Ivoire. So it's a tribute, homage to the heroes who conquered and civilized Côte d'Ivoire. So as you're guessing, the colonists who invaded Côte d'Ivoire, and this is just an example of what you find in the public space of a, once again, pretty small city.
A literal elephant in the room.
Yes, that's exactly it. So this monument is on the main square, and it's huge. It's I think at least 2 meters high. There is nothing commenting on the history and the fact that Côte d'Ivoire also gained its independence in the 60s, and there is now a small, I think, QR code that they kind of placed
if
2
you
meters
can find
from,
it.
and you have to look for it. But they are the city is very proud of them for doing that, and it's a step forward, I guess. You also have among the 3 or 4 only streets of the small city center, maybe half of them that are named after armateurs. So
Ship merchants.
yeah, who had plantations, and especially in Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, and who built their fortunes, and and also the reason why it is such a beautiful city with this grand hôtel particulier. For instance, the Rue Fleuriot, the Rue Admiraux.
A lot of wealth that came to that city.
Yes.
On those ships.
Yes, and as Catherine was saying, it's I think the second most important involved city in the slave trade in the 18th century. You have examples around where, such as Nantes and Bordeaux, which are cities that are not very far away, an hour or 2 hour away, that are much more advanced in the work of facing that history and creating these monuments and museums and these spaces for conversations that need to happen, and this historical work that needs to happen. So I had this frustration in me, and I knew that I probably had to at some point voice it, or to try to share my concern and maybe put some of my energy in this movement as a Senegalese citizen, but also as a French citizen. And one day, I find a brochure, a leaflet, and I see Rencontres decolonial encounters here in La Rochelle, and I was completely flabbergasted. What? What is that? And Danielle sent me an invitation, and that's when I met you, and when it all started.
So that is how the project 2027 is sort of starting to shape up through these meetings, the relationships you've been building in La Rochelle, the contacts you've made, and this idea that the conversation needs to get larger, right? And to connect more of the people who have been affected by the history of the city, right?
And I think a voice we need to hear now
Yeah.
is Ablaye, who has been for 30 years in La Rochelle,
Yep.
who is known as the white wolf. That's a French expression. Être connu comme le loup blanc. And his position on La Rochelle was very interesting to hear.
Back.
Ok. Alors, j'habite La Rochelle depuis une trentaine d'années. J'aime cette ville, elle est accueillante, elle est très belle.
So I've lived in La Rochelle for 30 years. I love the city. It's very beautiful.
Et depuis qu'on y est, on travaille sur cette question de la décoloniale.
So since we've been there, we've been working about this decolonialization.
Tant soit peu, c'est de petites actions, mais comme a dit Mère Teresa, c'est des gouttes d'eau qui manqueraient à l'océan.
Sometimes it's just small action, but as Mother Teresa said, it's small droplet that fill the ocean.
Ok. Et donc, à travers ça, on a installé une maison de l'Afrique et des Caraïbes que la ville a bien voulu mettre à disposition un espace tout petit, mais qui existe quand même.
So we just set a house called African and Caribbean House that the city has accepted to host.
Parce que nous avons été à l'école du caméléon. Caméléon?
Yeah.
We've been at the Chameleon School.
You don't know caméléon?
Yeah, you've learned from the chameleon,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So you'll take a small space and
C'est la philosophie africaine. Hein?
That's the African philosophy.
Le caméléon est très lent.
The chameleon is very slow.
Il pose un pied.
It's 1 foot.
Il assure que le pied est bien installé.
So you make sure that it's really fit.
Et seulement après, il lève l'autre.
When he's sure that when he tried to lift another foot,
Il a la chance d'avoir des yeux qui tournent sur 360 degrés.
and he's lucky to have eyes that go around 360 degrees.
Il change de couleur.
He changes colors.
Ce n'est pas de l'hypocrisie.
It's not hypocrisy.
C'est juste s'adapter.
It's not hypocrisy, it's just adaptation.
Et quand il marche, il accroche la queue au cas où, s'il y a un problème, il se retire.
And when he goes ahead, he just attaches his tail so that if there's any issue, he just go back.
Et quand il va à la chasse,
And when he hunts,
il envoie sa langue.
he sends his tongue.
C'est la langue la plus rapide de la création.
That's the fastest tongue in the creation.
On a été à cette école-là.
We've been in that school.
Donc, petit à petit,
So by small steps,
on a installé une pratique autour des cultures africaines.
so we've installed a practice around African cultures.
Le tambour, la danse, le chant, les récits, les contes.
Drumming, dancing, singing, storytelling.
Le Sénégal ou même l'Afrique est à 4 heures de vol de Bordeaux. C'est pas si loin que ça.
Senegal or Africa is just 4 hours flight from Bordeaux.
Mais le continent le plus méconnu en Europe reste l'Afrique.
But the continent that is
the least well known
the least known is Africa.
in Europe is
Et pourtant,
Yeah, Africa.
en tout cas en France, je ne pourrais pas dire en Europe, mais en tout cas en France, le continent le moins connu en termes de philosophie, de pensée, de culture, reste l'Afrique.
The least known continent in Europe, at least in France, I know it's Africa in terms of philosophy, cultures.
Et pourtant, il y a beaucoup plus d'Africains qui parlent français que de Français qui parlent français.
And there's more Africans speaking French than French speaking French.
Et malgré tout, on ne nous connaît pas.
But despite that, they don't know us.
Souvent, on débute notre histoire à partir de la découverte des Européens de l'Afrique.
So they start our story from the time Europe discovered Africa.
Et la question de la décoloniale est très complexe parce que il faut décoloniser les mentalités des deux bords.
So the decolonial issue is very complex because we need to decolonize the two minds from the two sides.
Senghor, qui était notre premier président poète,
Senghor, who was our first president and poet,
je crois qu'il est resté une trentaine d'années, quelque chose comme ça, au pouvoir.
he stayed on the leadership for 30 years.
Il était poète,
He was a poet.
c'est pas un problème.
That's not a
That's
problem.
not a problem.
Il a écrit L'instinct est nègre et la raison est hélène.
He wrote L'instinct est l'aigre. I think that's a title of.
C'est un vers qui est célèbre, hein?
Tu peux répéter, Ablaye?
Oui.
Vous pouvez répéter juste le nom de le.
Senghor, président poète,
No, but what is the line he
écrit.
said?
Ouais, le titre de l'écrit.
Oui, j'arrive. L'instinct est nègre.
Yeah.
L'instinct est nègre. L'instinct
Instinct is
negro.
black.
Negro.
Et la
Negro.
raison est hélène.
And the reason is
Greek.
Greek. Ah.
Yeah, white.
Okay, and reason is
Right.
Greek. Helen.
Yes, we have that. So, Salimata Diop, another a physical scientific Senegalese.
Salimata Diop, another scientist,
Ouais.
Senegalese scientist.
Évidemment, il y a eu beaucoup d'opposants, dont Salimata Diop, qui s'est beaucoup insurgé contre ce genre de pensée.
And there was a lot of people that was one of them who was against that kind of thinking.
Et ça, c'est le travail de l'école coloniale.
That's the work from colonial school.
Donc, ça fonctionne. Alors, je crois qu'il y a un an, le ministre de l'Intérieur en France a dit que la colonisation était une bonne chose, bienfaitrice.
So I think it works because it's been just 1 year. The Minister of Internal Affairs in France said that colonialization was a good thing.
Donc, quand un projet comme ça arrive, autour de X2027, c'est une opportunité d'avoir une voix au-delà des petites choses. Donc, c'est comme ça qu'on a rencontré Catherine, Adrien et tout ça autour de ce projet.
When there's a project like this in 27 that comes, it's an opportunity for us to voice our thought, even if it's with small things. That's how I met Catherine and Adrian.
It's
and
an
everyone.
opportunity to go beyond the small things
Yeah.
that
Et ce
they've
chemin
been
n'est
doing
pas-
and have
Ouais.
a louder voice.
C'est ça. Et ce chemin n'est pas facile, mais comme le caméléon, pas à pas, on construit les choses.
The path is not really easy, but as like the chameleon, we go step by step and we build things.
Okay. Et donc, c'est aussi l'occasion de rencontrer d'autres communautés comme les Blackfoot. C'est vraiment génial. Donc, on est venu ici, on a été au powwow.
So it was also an opportunity to meet other nations as Blackfoot. So it was a good opportunity. We went to powwow.
C'est très puissant, c'est fort, c'est ancré.
It's really powerful. It's really strong.
Et donc, il y a que de vrai, la culture. Si on arrive à partager nos cultures, on ira au-delà du racisme et de l'arrogance.
There's nothing more than culture. If we can share our culture, so there will be nothing as racism and everything.
Ok, merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Si vous le permettez, je peux faire...
Yes, I think this is
If
a
you
good
allow, I will
moment
just
to speak
do some
with your
drumming.
drum.
Ok, donc je vais faire une chanson qui parle du chemin, hein, le chemin du caméléon, the road.
Okay, I will do a song that speaks about chameleon path.
Na silo bet minto, na wo silo bet, na silo bet minto, na wo silo bet, falmaje silo bet daming, sanchaba silo bet minto. Falmaje silo lo betami Sanchabasi lo bento na na oh na oh na oh na na oh na oh na oh na si lo bento na oh Almajesi lo betami Sanchabasi lo bento Almajesi lo betami Sanchabasi lo bento
Merci, Ablaye.
Merci. Alors, je voudrais juste parler du tambour
I just wanted to talk about the drumming.
dans la cosmogonie africaine.
In the African cosmology.
Okay, in the African cosmology.
Aujourd'hui, on fait les tambours avec des fils parce que le pétrole est arrivé.
And now we do drums with wires because there is oil.
Mais avant, c'était avec des pieux. Pieux, like
Okay.
sticks. Yeah, okay.
Okay, before it was with sticks.
Yeah, on faisait des trous
We just put some holes.
et on tire la peau et on fixe. On tire la peau, on fixe.
Then we pull the skin and we fix.
Ok. Et il y avait toujours 7 trous.
And there was always 7 holes.
7, yes. Parce que le 7 symbolise la parole féconde.
So 7 is a symbol of
Fecundity,
fertile,
fertility, yeah,
fertility.
abundance.
La parole féconde.
Yeah,
The word is fertile.
fertile.
Parce que le tambour symbolise une parole, c'est aussi une parole. Il parle, le tambour, il parle. Il
Ah.
ne joue pas, il parle.
The drum symbolizes a word. It doesn't play, but it speaks.
Dans la Bible, je crois, je ne suis pas sûr, je ne l'ai pas lu entièrement.
In the Bible, I'm a believer.
Dieu a soufflé le verbe.
Jesus
Well, his father
blows
first.
the
His father.
We're not too sure, but
C'est bon? Ok.
God, blew and
blow the
Uh-huh.
word.
The words.
created the
Yes.
word first.
Et nous avons entendu le verbe
And we heard the verb
et on a appris.
and we learned.
Les Africains pensent
African thinks that
que le premier verbe est descendu dans le tambour.
the first verb just came to the drums.
C'est pourquoi le tambour reste un outil de résistance,
So the drum represents a tool of resistance,
comme chez les Blackfoots,
like in Blackfoot community,
comme en Bretagne, chez les Vikings, j'aime partout, tambour.
as in Britain, in Vikings, the drumming.
Parce que le tambour est notre parole féconde.
Because the drum is our fertile word.
Alors, la femme amène 4,
Le femme?
il y a 7.
Women bring
Four.
7
Four.
or 4.
4,
Mhm.
like, comme son organe sexuel.
Like his sexual organs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Et l'homme en amène 3,
The man brings 3,
comme ses organes sexuels.
like his sexual
So the
organ.
number 7 comes from the
Oh.
4
Merci.
Women,
Merci.
four,
elements
and
of
men.
Yes.
women's fertility and sexuality, and 3 from the men's.
Mhm.
C'est grâce à cette rencontre que nous sommes tous là.
It's because of that encounter that we are all here.
Et le tambour symbolise
Those
ça.
encounters.
And,
And
the
the
drum
drum.
symbolizes that.
OK.
Okay.
Thank you, Ablaye. And we should probably mention, because the images are showing how you've been involved all this time that you've lived in La Rochelle in teaching and building knowledge about your culture within the communities in La Rochelle, and cultivating respect and that kind of exchange that comes on the interpersonal level, one-to-one, building maybe the foundation for what comes next. Adrian, would you like to talk about Buffalo Boy?
Sure, I'll always talk about Buffalo Boy. If for you, those who may not be aware, during my master's at U of S, I was working with performance art, and so I sort of started to get into that field. And one of the things that came up for me was looking at the history, of course, of the Americas. And one individual particularly stood out, and that was Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill has a sort of a notorious history as a buffalo hunter, Indian killer, all those sort of things. But he circled back around and created Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, which really was a spectacle very similar to the Stampede. And in a way sort of was the narrative of conquest. But also there's an interesting aspect to it, was the invitation of like Sitting Bull and other indigenous people into the Wild West. So I decided to make a character parody of Buffalo Bill, and I was sitting in my studio one day thinking, Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Boy. So I decided to create Buffalo Boy as sort of a parody of Buffalo Bill, and looking and talking back to that colonial history. So Buffalo Boy did a number of performances over the years, in sort of also combining my own identity as a two-spirited person, Blackfoot, and such. So really talking back to the history of colonialism, both past, present, and future. So Buffalo Boy kind of traverses time in many different ways, and also has a sub-character, the Shaman Exterminator, which is more of a buffalo, and acts like a buffalo in performances. So anyway, that's Buffalo Boy. So part of the research at La Rochelle was Buffalo Bill did the Wild West show in La Rochelle in 1903. And so there's the connection. And so I thought, okay, now it's time to bring Buffalo Boy back. So part of the discussion was really to create a performance. And this is all being in the development, so things may shift and stuff like that. But really it was Buffalo Boy's The American Indian Returns. And so Buffalo Boy often does like the contrary, opposite, and sort of rewinds history. So really looking at Samuel de Champlain, who is from
Brouage. Samuel de Champlain was born in Brouage, which is a small city half an hour from La Rochelle, where we are going to work also, actually.
Cool. So I'll just read you just a little bit here of the introduction into this performance. In 2027, at the age of 424, Buffalo Boy embarked on their first voyage to France as part of a bison expedition led by the Shaman Exterminator. This impending journey sparked their lifelong fascination with the Old World. In addition to their exploration and decolonization efforts, Buffalo Boy will play a crucial role in the love trade industry. They recognized the unfruitful, unproven foreplay of the love trade and actively promoted its development, which will greatly benefit Old France and establish its fruitful endowment. So that's kind of where Buffalo Boy is going.
Sounds amazing.
So Buffalo Boy plans an expedition to Old France, from the New World to the Old World. An actual transatlantic crossing is being considered for Buffalo to actually sail across the Atlantic and land in France. And upon landing in France, we'll claim France in the name of love, l'amour. Yeah. And in doing so, we'll sort of speak to that colonial history, but also with a bit of humor. Part of my work as in performance is bringing humor into it. I often find humor breaks the ice in many ways and sets a stage for actual discussions. So upon landing, there's planned in discussion with various organizations in La Rochelle to have a welcoming. The past mayor now, he was the mayor for many years, was, what's his name? Jean-François Fontaine. And he's actually one of the owners of Fontaine catamarans. So the largest catamaran builder in the world. So we're trying to get him to actually help Buffalo Boy sail across. So let's hope that happens.
Should we? I think we missed a little bit of context here, just to.
But
Catherine, if you want to explain the why 2027.
in fact, it's wonderful the way it's coming with Buffalo Boy, because Adrian's idea was really an idea that came up right after Les Rencontres des Coloniales, which was January 2023. And we decided, oh my God, yes, that performance has to happen. We will see then another project with Barry Ace that also was initiated at that time. We'll have a little video for the end. And the two other members of the Mobile Décolonial du Tank, Laurie Bevis and Michelle McGough, now are working on their project too. But so by the way, the Mobile Décolonial du Tank became the Interwoven Futures Collective. So I needed to clarify that. So these work have started to shape their residency in 2024. And in the process of all of that, Daniel Olgiati, always the same Daniel, is coming one day to tell me, Catherine, do you realize it's going to be the centennial of the La Rochelle Colonial Expo? And we realized that most of people in La Rochelle, including people in cultural institutions, had no idea that there had been a colonial expo in La Rochelle in 1927. It's one of the 10th colonial expo that took place in France between the late 19th century and 1931. The last one was in Paris. So what could be best for us to mark the centennial of a colonial expo in our decolonial way, of course. So that's the magic of the place we are right now, is that we have this IF collective, which is the indigenous driven force behind our project. And in La Rochelle, we created another circle that we've called the Circle 2027. Ablaye is one of them. Salimata is one of them. Daniel Olgiati, that you've heard a lot, is part of them. And also Muriel O'Haraud, who is an historian, a curator, and an archivist, who was born and is from the Île of La Réunion in the Indian Ocean. So here are these two teams that are working together, anchoring the project with the work that have started to develop, bringing Salimata, bringing Ablaye, and the other people from X20, from the circle, to develop other projects. So we are right now in the process of shaping the programming. And maybe Salimata, do you want to continue with the idea you started to have in mind for X20?
Can I just add one more thing before we switch from these images? I just want to acknowledge that the image that we're showing actually belongs to photographer Jeff Thomas, who is an amazing artist as well, and who took this portrait of Adrian.
And here lies the serendipity. This was taken many years ago, and all of a sudden, this project comes up. So it makes sense, as you see. And I often wonder if there's something greater at work here. But
Buffalo
maybe
Boy was
after
younger.
we'll talk about the connection to Blackfoot Crossing as well. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I didn't realize the photograph were taken before.
Jeff Thomas is an Anishinaabe Ojibwe artist, and it's part of the series Scouting for Indian, no? Is that part of the series? Yeah. That's
He's
not Ojibwe?
He's Iroquois. He identifies.
Apologies.
Yeah, so the idea, as Catherine was explaining, is to reverse the approach of a colonial expo, to have this circle and artists who are from the cultures that were exhibited and objectified, and to make them the actors and the initiators of the programming. And of course, we cannot be, comment dire, parler de tout le monde.
We cannot be exhaustive.
But we want to invite and represent these cultures. So that includes, of course, countries from Africa, all the territories that used to be French Empire, and the Caribbean. So that's kind of these geographies that I'm getting involved into most.
Yeah. So we have developed a kind of manifesto, we could say. The five of us, we've worked on a 6-page document that describe the concept of the project, describe the methodology, describe the value, and really, I cannot go into great detail, but soon it's going to be online. But really, the main thing is nothing about us without us, which is a practice that is the practice in France, in culture in general. So this is the first statement that we're trying to make in our project. We don't know how this project is going to go. There will be a lot of performances. There will be work with museums. The Museum of Natural History, one of their head curator was here last year, as I was mentioning, has given a carte blanche to the Siksika Nation to develop a video project about Black food culture. She said that there has never been a Museum of Natural History in France that has done something like that, so we'll see how that goes. We also don't have only good collaboration. We are in a kind of statu quo with the Museum of the New World, who seems to have a hard time to understand this concept of nothing about us without us. But we are shaping. We are going to work in the interstice. On dit interstice en anglais?
Liminal spaces.
Yeah, we are ready to be as a guerrilla as needed, but so far there are a lot of organizations that are interested to collaborate with us.
I was going to say those practices are really coming. They're more developed here, but harder to accept in France.
And if I may, the first actual encounters that I attended, because I was sick on the first, but it was so inspiring for me to listen to you, Adrian, and to Barry, and to discover that model, because for me it's a model now of how you are leading this change, and especially the nothing about us without us mental, because indeed it's really something that I don't see and I don't find in the spaces where I work, where I've worked for 15 years. And just as an example, I believe that there is no institution today in France that has a prominent department about African cultures, that has an African curator or director. It doesn't exist. And to get invited and to be often turned into as I have, token Black person is still very common.
Is it a good moment? Pardon. No. Is it a good moment to show Barry's film, to give voice to their project and show? And after that, we can open. If anyone has any questions, we can take a few questions.
The project is an invitation of Barry Ace, who is an Anishinaabe, Ojibwe artist from Chigin First Nation, to Olive Martin and Patrick Bernier, who are two artists who live in Nantes, so near La Rochelle. So this is a film that was initiated during a 3-week residency last September, where they started their project.
Melody, if you're able to, great.
My name is Barry Ace. I'm Anishinaabe Odawa from Chagin First Nation, Manitoulin Island. I'm a Dubendajigig, a citizen of Chagin First Nation. Catherine brought us up to Nantes, where I met Patrick and Olive. And I thought it would be great to do a textile piece in collaboration with them, and something that we could create around repatriation. And so that's kind of how the idea materialized. The piece is called Basquab with Morgan, and it means to return something back to its owner, and that is our language. Work represents a wampum, or an agreement contract, and it's a contemporary work, and it is a mnemonic device that recounts opportunities for dialogue and communication between peoples. The work is based on the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, which includes sections, articles in the document to talk about repatriating Indigenous cultural property.
Chaque personne sera en charge d'un article, etc. On va faire la tension du film.
Okay. Qu'est-ce que c'est? It's like our histories. It's interwoven, but it's also entangled. It's a convoluted, entangled history. And we have to make sense of that. We have to, and that's what I like watching here, for example, where the process is so, for me, it's so complicated, but when you do encounter a problem, you are able to slowly work backwards and undo or fix that error. And I think that's kind of that process of negotiation that's needed, especially for these institutions that are dealing with perhaps sacred objects that should be returned to communities. And so there has to be kind of a reciprocity process that's in forward. And that's what this belt is doing as well. It's moving forward. So everybody who participates and works on it will leave their mark on the piece as well. So it's almost like a time capsule in a way. This conversation that we started is between Anishinaabe and France. That's the first conversation. After that, we had talked about this loom traveling. It could go to the Maori in New Zealand. It can go to Aborigine in Australia. It can travel. Other people will add their voice, whether they're marginalized or not. Everybody has a voice. But it's not just about repatriation, because inside that vessel are all the articles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, including the right to self-government, the right to respect, everything else. So I worked on that project, and that was really interesting to see her story.
So, if I don't know if you want to do and say anything kind of to conclude conclude the presentation of the project, but if we can also leave it open and see if there are any questions from the public. Please, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and my colleague Muriel will come bring you a microphone. Yep, there is a question.
Oh, sorry, just a second.
Just so we can hear.
I just had a quick question about how we can find that document once it's released.
How, once you put up your information on a website, how will people know how to find it? Well, at least
I think you mentioned
We'll let Mona know.
Contemporary Calgary will share it for sure.
You can already find, there are 2 pages on my website, elegoa.com, One is on Les Rencontres des Coloniales. The page is in French and in English, and one is on the Mobile Décolonial du Tank. So you have an overview of that, and you can reach out also to us.
And you'll probably add to
Yeah,
your website
yeah, we'll
links
add
at
as we
least
go.
to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm shifting.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I have a question that I didn't get to ask yet. But I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about, the ethics that guide you, the process in the process, how you're thinking about the process in ways that match the intentions, and also what do you think you will be able to accomplish in terms of what can art accomplish in these decolonial efforts?
When I attended and participated in the last 2 day, not the last, the one before, the 2-day Rencontre des Coloniales last year, at some point I took a step back because it was really so intense and so interesting, and there were so many amazing conversations happening. And at some point I remember thinking, how did this magician and the people around her achieve that? Because you have a room with the people from the city, so representing la ville de La Rochelle and all what you can imagine that they stand for and have to defend. You have artists from all around the world and cultures all around the world. You have people who are very sometimes shy and quiet, and people who are angry and loud. And they are actually debating matters that are very sensitive and that sometimes still very personal, and where there is a lot of violence. And I was very impressed, and I was very also very happy to participate in that.
So what I could say about the ethic is about the ethic that you were asking. The first is collaboration. It's really first of all, I'm white, I'm French, I'm Canadian. So obviously I give the voice to other people. I do things and I propose myself, but I always consult. And I'm very grateful to be part of the Interwoven Futures Collective, because I go to them all the time when I have a doubt, and it's working so far. The other important thing is that we are not product-oriented, we are relation-oriented. In our manifesto for X 2027, we say we're going to go as far as we can. It is an independent project. We are funded mostly by Canada Council. We have other funders that is actually, it's a great opportunity, but l'ambassade de France, le consulat de France à Montréal, à Vancouver, Art Right Truth, Centre Intermonde in La Rochelle also gave us with a bit of funding. But we get the funding as we go. So, but even if the funding would, which is not going to happen because I'm meeting with David on Saturday to learn to get $1 million. So we're going to make that happen. But even if it would stop tomorrow, what has been done so far is an accomplishment. So to me, this is a decolonial way to see it. It's not that we are looking for failure. No, we are doing our best, but we are going deep through all these conversations you were mentioning in challenging what needs to be challenged, especially with institutions and people that are trapped in a format where and in a shell that they don't even have the time to question. So I think we are doing a very deep work.
I think it's also too the idea that, you know, for people who want a change, this is a space where you can make that change. And I think that, you know, it's been a really wonderful journey. I know for myself, you know, yes, La Rochelle has this sort of very conservative, very sort of staunch French sort of history, sort of protective of all that sort of stuff. But we're human beings. And, you know, if we're able to talk to each other about these issues in a good way, hopefully there's, you know, cracks start to show and people go, oh, yeah, well, we should do this. And that's happened. People realize the changes that need to be made, but don't necessarily know how. And so I think IF and the Mobile Decolonial Do Tank is about doing and about, you know, doing it with respect. We'll never approach anyone who doesn't want to do it. And I think that's the important thing, is that if people want to do it, we're there. And we're there 100%. And we're there with goodwill and, you know, breaking bread together. Like the best way to get to know people is to sit down and have dinner with them. You know, that's the best, one of the best ways. And, you know, over the last few years and just, you know, meeting Salimata and Ablaye, you know, my life is so much richer. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, now we can see our similarities and our differences and the goals we want to achieve collectively. You know, and I think that that's a really wonderful aspect, and how this project is growing, and Mona now, and, you know, it's just like,
I'm so excited. And Buffalo Boy will be coming
yes, coming back
from his voyage and show us his findings at Contemporary Calgary.
Exactly.
After his adventures in La Rochelle.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for exhibition in 2028.
So I think it's just a really wonderful opportunity, and to share it. You know, I think that we all need stories. We all need song. We all need these things to enrich our lives further. And I think, and also, yeah, again, just seeing the similarities as well.
Yes. Muriel, thank you for the mic. Well, this way I think it also gets recorded for posterity.
So I have a question for you, Adrian. Earlier in the conversation, it was on the subject of the drum, and Ablaye brought up that the drum has a similar purpose in a way as it does in Blackfoot culture. I was wondering, in your encounters with these cultures that around the world, how has that informed your performing practice?
Well, of course, the drum in Blackfoot culture really speaks to the heartbeat of you know, of the people, of the mother, that sort of stays with you through the rest of your life, and, you know, and also becomes, you know, also a symbol of, you know, resistance, of all those things. So I think that, you know, the lessons that we learn from the drum in particular translate into everyday life. You know, voice, the youth of our voice. You know, leading with our hearts, those kind of things. So I think those kind of aspects are sort of embedded within me, within my sort of Blackfoot being, but also part of that process of sharing that knowledge and understandings, you know, by example. I think that's the one thing that's so important, and all that we do is by example, you know, and I think that that's most important. And, you know, when I say resistance, you know, when you think about the drum in particular in North America and the old Westerns, you know, the war party, there comes the drums. Oh, everybody, you better run. But I think it has more than that. It's more about the welcoming. And I think that Salimata and Ablaye can attest that, you know, the importance of what the drum does. It brings us together. And in that bringing together, it manifests performance, it manifests the dance, it manifests the songs, it manifests the possibilities in the storytelling. So I think that that's how it probably sort of manifests through me.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else wants to add anything? Any other questions? Oh, we have another question. Great.
I just have a question about how and if you have encountered any places of intractable opposition. So it sounds like La Rochelle is a pretty conservative town, Calgary is a pretty conservative town. And a lot of these initiatives meet with a lot of cultural opposition, especially when you're encountering centuries of embedded history that you're attempting to unpack. And I'm thinking here too about your relationship possibly with the Museum of the New World. And if you could just speak a little bit to that, if you have encountered anything this way. I'm unfortunately I'm sure you have.
I think Catherine's best to do that. She's our scout. she goes ahead of us, and she encounters these things and sort of deflects them away from us. And thank you for that.
And then you advise on how to do and on how to keep quiet and how to be a chameleon and all these things. So what's a little bit perverse is that there is also in France this discourse in public institution that says, "Oh, we're going to decolonize. We are like it's starting. Like it's even the mayor of La Rochelle recently said, decolonization is we need to do that." So, but then they have a way to do it that actually is not exactly going that direction. And in fact, in the process of the relation we develop with people that we work with, we realize that the place where things are blocked or are stuck really are connected to people's personality and very simple things. They are not aware of what they do can be inappropriate, can be rude. So what we do in this situation is we don't push, and we had one very radical experience last September because Barry and I were supposed to we were on our way to Paris with Adrian, Barry, Adrian and myself. Adrian was flying the following day to go back for something he had to do here in Siksika. And we were supposed to be in a symposium in a rather prestigious university in France, Nanterre. This symposium has been in prep for about a year, and literally the professor who initiated that picked our brain since the beginning and really shaped the symposium with Barry speaking for about 80% of the symposium. All the visual identity of the symposium was Barry work. And the relationship, when it comes to talk about money, to talk about budget, were really bad. So Elegoa Cultural Production, with our grant, we were paying, of course, for our flights. We were probably the biggest sponsor of the event. And we were, of course, not acknowledged in the first wave of communication. But it became, how do I say that? We were on our way to start the symposium the day after, and at 5 p.m. we are on the train, and I receive a message that say, "Catherine, I just want to remind you that we cannot cover your cab fare to come and to go back." And it was just the last drop. It has been nasty and difficult, and at that point, Barry and Adrian, Barry said, "Catherine, we are going. If you need to go, we're going to be there, blah, blah." But, really, do you really think it's the right thing to do? I think my heart started to beat very, very fast because I started to realize, no, the right thing to do was not to go. But dropping the University of Nanterre the day before is not something easy to do.
No. But I think it really sort of showed as a testament to the strength of our group in supporting each other. And I think that's the important part of this, too, is that as a group, when we encounter these moments, we're able to gather and say, well, this is what's happened. How do we deal with it? In that case, we had a very in-depth meeting, Catherine, Barry, and I, and we just said, no. We're done. The way we have been treated, or in particular you and Barry, the way you have been treated throughout that entire process, the appropriation of Indigenous knowledge without even an inkling of wanting to pay cab fare. Like, come on. Come on, pay the cab fare. That's a small gesture. You know, there's these things, and that really spoke volumes to what they were doing. They were just wanting to use us. And so that wasn't respectful. And so therefore, we have voice, we have agency, and so therefore, no.
And we did it gracefully, like Barry and Adrian wrote an email to the organizer, to the participant, without accusing anyone, just saying we were looking forward to be there, but we will not be. So it was, I think it had an impact, and also in the process of developing partnership, I tell the story because I want people to know that this is not what we intend to do, but it can happen. And with the Musée du Nouveau Monde, with the Museum of the New World, they came here as they were invited, as we mentioned to you, and one of the curators didn't mention to us an exhibition she had in preparation for that opened this month, which was an exhibition that would allow us to connect 4 nations from Quebec, from 4 indigenous nations along the Saint Laurent, to the story of a cabinet de curiosité from La Rochelle and the area. And she didn't talk to us about it, and when I heard of it, I said, okay, let's change the plan. Let's pause on this show, and let's invite members of this community to work with you. And it was a no, 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 no. So eventually, and it took them 4 months to realize that, we eventually told them, we think that your methodology, our methodology, can no longer match your methodology in order to move forward. So if you want to talk about it, we can review it. So they came back with a lot of surprise, but why drama? And then we said, listen, come back to us, make proposal. Do you have idea? But write a letter, like be civilized, write letters. And so, but we are not forceful, like there was no argument, no conflict, just okay, let's stop. If it's going to be like that, we better not do that. Thank you for the question.
Mona, I wanted to answer something you you asked earlier, how art can also impact. Another way maybe to answer, but in like considering the public more. But I think most artists I've worked with don't really have this expectation or hope that people will walk in an exhibition and say, oh, it's beautiful, it's nice. And I think the greatest compliment they can get is that it moved me, or and emotion can also be negative. I think in La Rochelle, thinking of this very complicated population, a very mixed population, I think I expect to have a lot of different kind of reactions and responses, and there will probably be people who will be irritated and say, oh, again, they talk about colonization, haven't we done enough? What about the Vendée events, and what about this other? Because La Rochelle has a very violent history, and not only involvement in the slave trade or the colonization of the Americas. And so I expect this kind of reactions. I think for me, I don't know, we've never really talked about that, I think. But I think for me, it's if we move and if we trigger change of perspective in just a few people, I'll be happy.
But I think half of the population, as you were saying, the diversity. La Rochelle was also a city that was sieged by the King of France in I think it was Louis XIII. It was a Huguenot city, and it was too powerful. It was too independent. The king couldn't. So they sieged the city for a year, so many died, and some of them crossed the ocean and settled the New Rochelle city that is just north of New York. So it has also this kind of rebellious, resistant people. It's a very complex fabric. Yes.
That came back.
Je peux juste
Yes,
rajouter.
please.
Mais la nature humaine est très complexe parce que quand Catherine parle des Huguenots qui ont fui les persécutions de Richelieu, enfin voilà, Richelieu, et qui s'en vont, qui viennent au Canada, mais certains sont partis en Afrique du Sud et font partie des gens qui ont instauré l'apartheid. Vous voyez, c'est très complexe, la nature humaine.
Yeah. The human nature is very complex because when Catherine was talking about people who just fled the king in La Rochelle, some of them came to Canada and some of them went to South Africa, and they're the one who started apartheid.
Et donc, je crois que chaque goutte d'eau a sa place. Et donc, c'est l'information, c'est le partage des cultures, le partage des informations, et c'est ce travail qu'on essaie d'installer sur le X2027. Et les défis sont institutionnels.
And I think every drop has its impact. So now it's just sharing information, culture, and we also have some challenges that are institutional.
En 1944, à la fin de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, qui était en fait une guerre européenne, hein. Les Africains sont venus faire la guerre sans savoir qu'est-ce qu'ils venaient faire là.
In 1944, just at the end of the Second World War, which was an European war, I know African fought, but they didn't know what was going on.
Et à la fin de la guerre, De Gaulle a empêché les soldats, les tirailleurs, on ne dit même pas soldats. Les Africains n'avaient même pas le titre de soldats. Ce sont des tirailleurs. Tirailleurs in French, ça signifie tire ailleurs, quoi.
Okay. So African soldiers who didn't even have the title of soldiers, they were called shooters.
Ne tire pas ici, tire ailleurs.
Tire ailleurs, ça veut dire tirer ailleurs.
Shoot somewhere else.
It's a wordplay in French that's not really translatable, but
I don't think
it's shooting somewhere else.
Yeah. Peut-être quand le capitaine a donné le fusil aux soldats africains, il a visé le capitaine, ou je sais pas, non, pas là-bas, tire ailleurs.
So I think
it's a play on words with French.
It's our name, tire ailleurs. Même pas soldat, not soldier, tire ailleurs.
So they didn't even have the title of soldier, it was shoot somewhere else, if I can translate like that.
Alors souvent, quand on parle de la libération de la France contre le nazisme, on parle de l'armée américaine et des Russes. On ne parle jamais des Africains.
And when we talk about France's liberation against the Nazis, we talk about American army and Russian army. We don't talk about Africans.
Et à la fin de la guerre, il y a eu un défilé sur les Champs-Élysées et les Africains n'ont pas été autorisés à défiler.
So at the end of the war, there was a march at the Champs-Élysées, I guess, and Africans were not permitted to participate in the march.
Alors certains sont repartis au Sénégal, comme c'était la capitale de l'AOF, et sont restés longtemps à attendre leur salaire.
Some of them just went back to Senegal, that was the capital of the Western French Africa, and they waited for their salaries.
Et comme ça ne venait pas, ils ont fini par prendre en otage les supérieurs.
So since the salaries were not coming, so they ended up kidnapping the superior, the leaders,
pour avoir leur salaire.
So they can get their salaries.
Et De Gaulle a ordonné de les assassiner.
And the Gaulle just ordered the people, ordered that they be killed.
De Gaulle qui était le...
The Gaulle was the general, the French general. Yeah.
Ok. Et donc ça c'est un traumatisme national au Sénégal.
That's a national traumatism in Senegal.
Les preuves sont là et jusqu'à présent la France ne veut pas reconnaître ce crime de guerre.
And France has never recognized those crimes,
War crimes.
war crimes.
Et donc, les Français ne sont pas au courant.
French are not aware about
Personne.
that.
On ne l'apprend pas à l'école, on ne l'apprend pas à la fac, personne n'est au courant. Donc, le défi est institutionnel.
So French are not aware about that because they don't teach that at school, at university. So the challenge is institutionalized.
Ok, merci.
It's very much the challenge everywhere because it is systemic. It is about undoing centuries of building up these systems that are based on oppression and denial and all of that. But I do think that personally, I am really a great believer in the power of artists and art to open hearts and minds and to show different models, because often enough, there's a lack of imagination that blocks change. And so artists often lead the way, in my opinion, in terms of showing us other ways of being in the world and of being with each other. So I thank you very much for everything that you've shared with us and you are going to continue to share with us. I thank you all for staying with us along this evening and listening. And I hope you'll take away more thoughts and more ideas, and that you'll keep coming back to what we'll continue to show about this project.
Mona.
Yeah.
Je veux juste faire une chanson à la mémoire de ces soldats qui sont tombés à Thiaroye en 1944.
Okay, I have a song about those soldiers who just died in 1944.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone.